When it comes to driving at night, there's one thing we all try to do: avoid being stranded on an empty road with no one around. But sometimes that's unavoidable, and other times it's not your fault there's no one around. That is because some drivers will swear up and down that the only reason they're driving alone is because the people around them just vanished into thin air. From ghostly apparitions to creepy hitchhikers, here are 6 scary stories about driving alone at night that will make you never want to hit the road again. Scene 1. Mark was heading home from a late shift at the hospital. It was well past midnight and he was the only car on the normally busy highway for miles. Suddenly, a man holding a lantern appeared in front of him and was walking directly in his lane. Startled, Mark slammed on the brakes and honked furiously, hoping to scare the man away. But instead of running off to safety or jumping over the guardrail, the man just stood still and waved for Mark to pass. Disbelieving what he was seeing, Mark cautiously crept forward. But by the time he got close enough to the man to ask if he was okay, the man was gone. The only evidence of his existence was the faint glow of his lantern floating down the highway. Mark followed the light for a while, but eventually it faded and disappeared into the endless darkness. Was it really a man, or something more sinister? And why did he stand in the middle of the road and motion for Mark to drive past? No one knows for sure, but Mark still drives with his windows closed at night just in case. Scene 2. Emily was driving home from a night out with her best friend when they spotted a hitchhiker on the side of the road. Although she didn't condone with hitchhiking, Emily's friend insisted they pull over and pick the guy up since he looked like he needed a ride. As they passed, Emily noticed something strange about him. He didn't have a face. Where his nose should have been was a smooth, pale surface like he'd lost his face in an accident or had been born without it. Emily's friend slowed down, rolled down her window and asked if he was all right. But before he could respond, the hitchhiker ran off into the forest, disappearing between the trees. Emily and her friend looked at each other in disbelief, unsure of what they'd just seen. They continued on in silence for a while, both lost in thought until they heard a loud knock on their window. When they turned around, they realized it was the same hitchhiker and he was asking to be let inside the car. They refused and sped off, leaving the hitchhiker in the dust. But Emily still remembers the way he looked, and she hopes she never sees him again. Scene 3. A long-haul trucker was driving through the desolate countryside when suddenly he heard the sound of a child laughing in the back of his cab. At first, he dismissed it, assuming it was just a figment of his imagination caused by exhaustion. But the more he tried to focus on the road ahead, the louder the laughter became. As he turned to investigate, he caught sight of his rear-view mirror. There, sitting in the back of his trailer, was a small girl smiling up at him. She was wearing a Victorian nightgown and her hair was matted and tangled as if she hadn't washed it in weeks. Terrified, the driver slammed on the brakes and whipped around to face the girl, but she was gone. When he turned back to the road, he saw nothing but endless fields of darkness stretching into the horizon. Despite searching the area, he couldn't find any sign of the girl, leading him to believe that she'd only ever existed in his mind. But he still avoids driving at night in case he's not alone. Scene 4. Sarah was driving along a deserted country road when she noticed a pair of headlights approaching in the distance. Since the road was so narrow, she pulled over to the side to let the other car pass. But after waiting several minutes, she began to wonder where they were. The car was moving so slowly that it shouldn't have taken that long to pass, especially with no one else on the road. Just as she was about to honk and pass the car herself, she saw something strange. The driver wasn't human. Its eyes were glowing red and its skin was a sickly green. Sarah slammed on the accelerator and raced past the creature, honking loudly. As she sped away, she could hear the creature screeching and clawing at her car. When she finally managed to shake it off, she pulled over to catch her breath. Looking back, she saw that the creature had disappeared. Had she imagined the whole thing, or had she just narrowly escaped an alien encounter? Either way, she's never driven on country roads at night ever since. Scene 5. Alex was driving down a dark and winding road when suddenly his car broke down. He stepped out to inspect the damage and realized he was stranded. With no cell service and no one around, he decided to walk to the nearest gas station. As he walked, he could hear his car being towed away. Suddenly, a bright light appeared behind him and a truck rumbled past, nearly blinding him. Alex turned to follow the truck, but as he did, he saw a horrifying sight. The driver was hanging upside down in his seat and his eyes were wide with terror. Alex quickly looked away, but when he turned back, the truck was gone. Moments later, another car approached, this time a sleek black sedan. Alex stepped aside to let it pass, but as it drew closer, he saw the occupants were a family of ghouls. Their skin was gray and lifeless, and their eyes glowed an eerie green. Before Alex could react, they were upon him. The car screeched to a halt and the ghouls emerged from the vehicle. They were tall and emaciated with sharp teeth and claws. They lunged for Alex, knocking him to the ground and dragging him toward the car. Paralyzed with fear, he could only watch as they lifted him into the back seat. Then one of the ghouls turned around to face him and smiled, revealing a set of sharp fangs. "Don't worry," he said in a raspy voice. "We're going to take good care of you." Scene 6. David was driving home late at night when suddenly his car broke down on the side of a dark and deserted road. He tried to flag down a passing car, but none of them stopped. Frustrated and scared, David started walking along the road, hoping to find help. As he walked, he could feel the eyes of unseen creatures watching him from the darkness. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. David turned around and saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring at him in the darkness. He started to run, but the eyes seemed to follow him, always staying just out of sight. Panicked, David stumbled on and eventually collapsed on the side of the road. As darkness enveloped him, he could hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching him. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. And as the darkness consumed him, he knew he would never escape the terrifying fate that awaited him. But wait, it gets scarier. The next morning, a group of hikers found David's body lying on the side of the road. His eyes were wide with terror and his skin was clammy and cold. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. As the hikers moved closer, they noticed strange symbols carved into his chest and arms. They were symbols they'd seen before in ancient texts, symbols of a cult known as the Children of the Night. Legend has it that the cult still exists and worships an evil entity that lurks in the shadows. They use their victims to summon their master, and those who witness the summoning become the next victims. So if you ever find yourself alone on a dark and deserted road, beware. You might not be alone. These drivers still swear it was real. Next time you're driving at night, don't assume you're alone. That's all for this video. Please subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching.